Hello everyone. In today's video I'm going to show you different corsets and talk about the materials and sewing techniques that are used. If you're new, welcome to my channel and this video series that is all about pattern making, fashion design and dressmaking. Hi, I'm John, a Danish designer with over 25 years of experience based in Quebec, Canada. I'm here to share my knowledge and to help you create your own personal patterns that will fit no matter your size. So welcome. So here you see the table full of all the different materials and tools that I use when I make corsets. I will go through every single item during this video, so stay tuned. I am starting to show you the different options for closures of corsets that you see here. First of all, if you have created the perfect corset pattern for your size, fitted it with some help as explained in previous videos, you're ready for the next step. The next thing you have to do is choosing the right fabric. And there's plenty of options out there. I would recommend you to choose a solid quality fabric, not too loosely woven, maybe with some texture or a nice pattern or color that stands out. I would definitely avoid stretch fabric. Then you have to iron the fabric before cutting it and enforce the corset pieces with some iron-on interfacing or bast an extra layer of organza or cotton to the fabric, also reinforced, depending on the quality you use. If you use iron-on interfacing on the original fabric, make sure to make a sample first, because if it is a finer fabric, you risk that the glue will show through. And personally, I would overlock all the corset pieces before sewing them together to avoid too much fraying, but it is of course up to you. You have to decide what kind of closing you want in the front or back. There are several options. The most common and easy one is lacing, where you create holes and insert grommet rings with 2 to 3 centimeters space in between. You need tools like this to do that. So you have to measure mid-back or front and mark the holes on your pattern to be sure of the placement. Here I'm going to show you different corsets where I use this technique. This is a Chinese inspired brocade that are lined with some cotton satin. And as you can see here, I measured out the length of the mid-back to place the holes equally. You have to have at least 2 to 3 centimeters in between. And it's also important that you enforce mid-back so the holes don't tear the fabric. And often you place a piece of boning here behind the holes so you don't tear the fabric. This is another example with the lacing in it. Again, this one is lined. And this is made of silk with a cotton satin lining for comfort. A longer example with a different grommet color, made out of silk damask. And here I have all the boning hidden inside. I have facing on top and at the bottom. Another example, a more historically inspired corset, where I used this is the inside of the corset, again with the cotton satin. And for the front fabric, I used viscose satin. And a black version with smaller grommets. You can buy grommets either as gold, silver, or black bronze to match, to find the closest match to your fabric. This is a Chinese inspired silk. With the laces to bind around your neck. And at last, with the grommets, we have this red silk damask with a peplum and lined with cotton satin. And this is special corset because I backed the grommets with a piece of fabric so you don't feel any discomfort when wearing it. You can also use a piece, you can also decide to use a strip of hooks and eyes, like this one. Or sew them on like in this black silk corset with hand sewn beads on. But be aware of the closing, so it's hidden, so you need to figure out how to place the strips on the fabric by trying it out on the pattern before. As you can see, one side is further in and the other is on the edge. So when we close it, it's going to be hidden. And again, the corset is lined with some silk fabric again. Or instead of the strip of hooks and eyes like this one, you can also choose to sew the hooks and eyes on individually, like I did on this corset. Again, figure out how to place the hooks and eyes so the closing is hidden. Again, fold the pattern on both sides of the closing to be sure how to place the strips so they are covered by the fabric when closing. Again, this is a corset with a peplum made out of ikat woven dupion silk and lined with a violet cotton setting that is hand sewn on all around here inside. So there's no visible seams on the outside. You also have the option of using a busk like this in the front, so you can put on your corset yourself. It's a bit more complicated though. You need to sew one side of the front with spaces in between and push the holes through the fabric on the other side very carefully with an awl like this. So as you can see here, I use this method in this yellow silk corset. And the busk is sewn on the mid front with where you leave holes here in between the closing, and on the other side you pin the holes very carefully without breaking the fabric a little bit further in, stitch it here in front and behind so it won't move. So the opening is concealed. Last but not least, you can use the zipperable zipper with the exact measure of the corset. So buy the zipper first and make the pattern so it fits. Next up, I will show you different types of boning that I use when I make corsets and explain you where and how to use them. So hang on. Next is the boning of the corset. Historically, whale bones were used, but today there is better and different ways of doing this. The classic way is to use metal spiral bones. Like these ones with enforced ends. And as you can see, you can buy metal spiral boning in different widths. You measure the length and cut the spiral boning at the end on both sides so it has a nice round finish before you attach the metal ending, which is attached to protect the fabric inside. The metal spiral boning is used because they are more flexible and stable than plastic boning, which is more commonly used. It takes a bit longer though, but the fit of the corset will be better, I think. You can use the seam allowance on the corset to create the tubes for the boning by stitching them down, like I did here in this pink corset and the white satin corset here. I stitched all the seams from the outside. Another method is to add bias ribbons to the seams inside the corset that doesn't show from the outside. Like I did here. Only attached to the seam inside. You leave one end open to insert the boning and secure it afterwards. Here I used it only in the front with the biggest curve over the bust, and I use the mixed technique. I put some white boning on the lining to insert some plastic boning. Like this. To insert some plastic boning like this. It's not as flexible as the metal spiral boning, but it will do when the seams, when I attach it in between the seams. And as you can see here, I prepared for the grommet rings by enforcing the mid-back. That looks like this when it's turned. I used a facing on the top of the corset, and at the bottom I will sew it like this and push the lining a little bit over the top, so it will, when you turn it, not show on the front. Just 1 to 2 millimeters is enough for it to stay inside. So this is another way of doing it. And as you can see, I enforce the fabric inside with some iron-on cotton interfacing, as well as the facing on top. And as you can see here, there's different widths of boning and qualities of boning. There's 2 more rigid ones that can be inserted in the tubes, and there's this one that you actually can stitch on the fabric itself. So this is another ongoing project for a bridal dress with a corset top with a experimental cut. Okay. It contains only of 3 pieces, and here I sewed the lining a little bit different to have a better hold of the fabric. And like you can see here, I sewed the boning directly on the lining with secured ends of some bias ribbon. Generally, I would place the boning in each seam, or if you do it on the lining, place them in between the seams, like I did on this corset. Here's another example with some black lace application on top. In this case, I used 2 pieces of plastic boning here on the front that I sewed on the lining, and boning in between all the seams and at the end here, mid back, so I can place the holes behind the boning. And again, in this corset, because of the pattern, I wanted to keep the front without any stitching. So I decided to place all the boning on the lining inside. And this was the plastic boning that I could stitch on with enforced ends. Again, a boning at the mid back to place the holes behind that. And this is probably going to be a corset with grommet rings, because it's almost finished. But of course, you can also use a combination of the different methods that I showed you until now. Where you place metal boning in some of the seams on the fabric, and then you place the plastic boning in between if you need extra enforcement. And to continue the boning below the waist is always a good idea, so the corset or the dress stays in place. If the outer corset is part of a dress and only goes to the waist, you can eventually continue the lining below the waist and put the boning there. Lastly, if you're going to line the corsets, I would recommend to use a nice cotton, viscose or acetate fabric for the lining. It is more comfortable and your body can breathe. Polyester is basically made of oil and you will be uncomfortable and sweaty, so I would avoid that. But of course, it is also possible to create a corset without lining. The fabric needs to be quite sturdy and boned, either on the inside or outside, with bias ribbons that can also be used as a finish on the upper and lower edges. Or as I mentioned, use the seam allowance to create the tubes for the boning. As you can see, there is a lot of things to consider when you make a corset. It is a challenge, but if you follow my previous video instructions, it is possible to obtain a satisfying result. I am offering a workshop in all this if you are interested. Of course, you can also have a corset made to measure by me. Check out the link in the description and inquire. I hope you found this video useful. As you can see, there is endless possibilities if you know the basics of pattern making and design. So if you like what I'm doing, hit the like button, subscribe and follow along and learn how to make your own personal patterns. And download the size chart for free to get started. The link is in the description below. Don't forget to check out my previous videos and my blog if you want to learn more about all of this. And if you have any questions or problems, just let me know in the comments. I'm happy to help. Thank you for watching. That's all for today, and I will see you in my next video.